The thing about dying is that it really shows you who people are. Not who they pretend to be, not who they claim to be, but who they really are deep down. I learned this lesson the hard way at 28, watching my brother Marcus sip champagne in my hospital room while I was hooked up to a dialysis machine. I'm Sophie Watson, and 6 months ago, I was diagnosed with end-stage renal disease. Both my kidneys were failing, and without a transplant, I was looking at a life measured in hours of dialysis and bottles of medication. The doctors tested my entire family for compatibility. Mom wasn't a match. Dad had passed away years ago. But Marcus was perfect. A 98% match, practically identical tissue typing. The doctors called it a gift from genetics. Some gift. Look soft, Marcus said, lounging in the hospital room's visitor chair like it was a throne. You have to understand my position. I'm up for partner at the firm. Taking 3 months off for surgery and recovery, it could derail everything I've worked for. I stared at him over the dialysis machine's steady hum. My big brother, the corporate lawyer, the golden child. Growing up, he'd always protected me, stood up for me, been the best big brother a girl could ask for. Or so I'd thought. It's not just the time off, he continued, swirling his champagne. He brought it to celebrate his new yacht. Because apparently that's what you bring to a dialysis session. Surgery has risks. What if something goes wrong? What if I can't perform at peak level afterward? In my field, even a 1% decrease in performance could cost millions. Mom, who'd been sitting quietly in the corner, spoke up. Marcus, honey, the doctors said the risks are minimal. The recovery period is well documented. You could work from home after the first month. He waved her off. Mom, you don't understand the pressure I'm under. The partners are watching my every move. Besides, he gave me what he probably thought was a reassuring smile. Sophie's young. She can handle dialysis for a few years until they find a donor match. A few years. As if I wasn't already watching my life slip away, 3 hours at a time, strapped to this machine. As if I hadn't already lost my job as a kindergarten teacher because I couldn't stay on my feet all day. As if the medical bills weren't already drowning me. Actually, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Dr. Reynolds says I might not have years. The complications are getting worse. Marcus checked his Rolex. Speaking of complications, I need to run. The yacht dealer is holding that 48-foot azimuth for me, but only until 5. Need to sign the papers. He stood, straightening his custom suit. Oh, that reminds me. Mom, can we talk about advancing some of my inheritance? The yacht's a bit of a stretch on just my salary and bonus. I watched our mother's face change. Something shifted in her eyes, a hardness I'd never seen before. Of course, dear, she said, her voice oddly calm. Why don't you meet me at Mr. Patterson's office tomorrow? Say, 2 p.m. He handles all the family financial matters. Perfect. Marcus beamed, already typing on his phone. I'll have my assistant clear my schedule. After he left, taking his champagne aroma with him, Mom sat beside my bed. She took my hand, her fingers trembling slightly. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I didn't raise him to be this way. It's not your fault, I said, squeezing her hand. People make their own choices. She nodded, but that strange look was still in her eyes. Yes, they do. And choices have consequences. I should have paid more attention to her tone, should have recognized that my quiet, gentle mother was planning something. But the dialysis was making me drowsy, and I drifted off to sleep before I could ask what she meant. The next day, I had another visitor, Mr. Patterson, Mom's lawyer. He'd handled Dad's estate after the car accident 10 years ago, and he'd been managing the family's legal affairs ever since. I'd always liked him. He had kind eyes behind his wire-rimmed glasses and never talked down to me just because I wasn't in a high-powered profession like Marcus. How are you feeling, Sophie? He asked, setting his briefcase on the bedside table. Like I'm being slowly pickled, I joked weakly. But the nurses say my numbers are stable, so that's something. He nodded, glancing at his watch. Your mother asked me to be here at 2:30. She said it was important. Right on cue, Mom walked in. She wasn't alone. Dr. Reynolds, my nephrologist, came with her, along with 2 nurses I didn't recognize. Good, everyone's here, Mom said, closing the door. We should wait just a few more minutes. Marcus will be joining us. Mom, I was confused. What's going on? We're having a family meeting, she said simply, about choices and consequences. Before I could ask more questions, Marcus burst in, his face flushed with anger. "Mom, what the hell?" he demanded. "I waited at Patterson's office for half an hour." "Language, Marcus," Mom said calmly, "and please have a seat. Mr. Patterson has some documents to share with all of us." I watched in confusion as Mr. Patterson opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. The label caught my eye. Robert Watson, Life Insurance Policy and Medical Trust, 2013. Dad's insurance policy? Why were we looking at that now, 10 years after his death? "Before we begin," Mr. Patterson said, adjusting his glasses, "Mrs. Watson has asked me to play a video recording, one that your father made just before he died, but with specific instructions not to show it unless certain circumstances arose." He set up a laptop on my bedside table, angling the screen so everyone could see. When he pressed play, my heart nearly stopped. There was Dad, looking exactly like he had the day before the accident. He was sitting in his home office, healthy and alive, with no idea he had less than 24 hours to live. "If you're watching this," he began, "then something I feared might happen has come to pass." Part 2. Dad's familiar face filled the screen, and suddenly I was 10 years in the past. Before the accident, before the dialysis, before everything changed. "If you're watching this," he repeated, "then something I feared might happen has come to pass. One of my children needs serious medical help, and the other has refused to provide it." Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "I know my children," Dad continued, his eyes somehow seeming to look right at us. "I know Marcus's drive for success, his ambition, and I know Sophie's heart, her capacity for caring. I've always worried that someday these different natures might clash in a way that would tear our family apart." He picked up a document from his desk. "That's why I set up this special medical trust, tied to my life insurance policy. The policy itself paid out normally after my death, but this trust has remained dormant, waiting for specific conditions to be met." Mr. Patterson paused the video and pulled out some papers. "The trust your father established was quite innovative," he explained. "He called it a moral contingency clause." "A what?" Marcus demanded, his lawyer instincts clearly triggered. "Perhaps we should let your father explain," Mr. Patterson said, resuming the video. "The trust contains $2 million. Dad continued. "Money I made from my early investments, kept separate from our regular family finances. Under normal circumstances, it would be split equally between my children. However," he leaned forward, his expression growing serious, "if either of my children ever refuses to provide life-saving medical help to the other when they are a viable match, be it bone marrow, kidney, or any other donation, the entire trust automatically transfers to the child in need of medical care." The room went absolutely silent. Even the dialysis machine seemed to hum more quietly. "Marcus," Dad's voice was gentle but firm, "if you're watching this, then you've chosen career advancement over your sister's life. I understand ambition, son. I was a surgeon. I know about demanding careers. But I also know that no promotion, no partnership, no yacht is worth more than family." Marcus's face had gone pale, his champagne confidence evaporating. "Sophie," Dad continued, "if you're the one in need, know that this isn't just about money. The trust includes provisions for the best medical care available, including private nurses and home care during recovery. You won't have to worry about medical bills or lost wages." Tears rolled down my cheeks as Dad's image smiled sadly. "I'm sorry I'm not there to help you through this, but maybe in this small way I can still protect both my children, one from suffering and one from living with the consequences of a terrible choice." The video ended, leaving us in stunned silence. Marcus was the first to speak. "This can't be legal. I'll contest it." "You can try," Mr. Patterson said mildly, "but your father was very thorough. The trust has already been validated by 3 separate courts in similar cases, and contesting it would only generate publicity I doubt your law firm would appreciate." "Mom," Marcus turned desperately, "you can't let this happen. My yak deposit is nothing compared to your sister's life." Mom cut in, her voice sharp. "I've watched you transform from a loving brother into someone I barely recognize. The designer suits, the status symbols, the constant pursuit of more. Where does it end, Marcus? I've worked hard for everything I have." "No," Mom's voice cracked with emotion. "You've worked hard for everything you want. There's a difference. Dr. Reynolds cleared his throat. Perhaps this is a good time to review the living donor process again. The recovery timeline, the support systems available. Marcus wasn't listening. He was frantically typing on his phone, probably calculating numbers, trying to find a way out. Finally, he looked up, his face a mask of cold fury. Fine, take the money. I don't need it anyway. I'm making partner next month. Mom stood up slowly. Actually, you're not. Everyone turned to stare at her. What do you mean? Marcus asked, his voice suddenly uncertain. I had lunch last week with Margaret Chen. You remember her, senior partner, sits on the promotion committee? We serve on the hospital board together. Mom's voice was calm, almost conversational. I told her about Sophie's condition, about you being a match. She was very interested. Marcus's face went from pale to ashen. You didn't. Law firms care about their image, Marcus. A partner who refuses to donate a kidney to save his dying sister. Not quite the public image they're going for. Mom smoothed her skirt. Margaret assured me they'll let you down gently. Cite changing market conditions, reorganization of departments. You'll get an excellent reference for your next position. I watched my brother crumble, his carefully constructed world falling apart. In that moment, he looked less like the polished corporate lawyer and more like the boy who used to build blanket forts with me during thunderstorms. I could still donate, he said quietly. Would that change anything? Dr. Reynolds stepped forward. Medically, yes. Sophie's condition is deteriorating. A living donor transplant soon would significantly improve her prognosis. But it wouldn't be from love, I said, speaking for the first time since the video started. It would be to save your career, your reputation. Just another transaction. Marcus flinched as if I'd slapped him. Mr. Patterson cleared his throat. The trust goes into effect immediately. Sophie, we'll need to go over some paperwork once you're feeling stronger. The funds will cover all medical expenses, lost wages, and provide for your long-term care. What about me? Marcus asked, sounding very young suddenly. What am I supposed to do? Mom's face softened slightly. That depends on you, doesn't it? Your father's video wasn't just about money. It was about choices, about the people we become when faced with difficult decisions. The next few weeks were a blur of medical consultations and paperwork. The trust covered everything, not just the basics, but also experimental treatments, alternative therapies, even a private nurse to help me at home. I didn't have to worry about rent or bills or losing my apartment. Marcus disappeared for a while. Mom said he'd taken a leave of absence, checked into some wellness retreat in Arizona. The partnership offer was quietly withdrawn, just as she predicted. Then, one morning, 3 weeks into my new treatment plan, he showed up at my apartment. He looked different, thinner, less polished, wearing jeans instead of his usual suit. I've been doing a lot of thinking, he said, standing awkwardly in my living room. About who I've become, about what really matters. I waited, not making it easier for him. I'd like to be tested again, he said finally, for the kidney donation. Not for my career or the money, but because you're my sister. Because I remember the boy who would have done anything to protect his little sister, and I'd like to try to be him again. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Trust, once broken, doesn't heal as easily as bodies. But it was a start. The transplant surgery happened 2 months later. As they wheeled us into adjacent operating rooms, Marcus reached over and squeezed my hand, just like he used to do before my kindergarten recitals when I was nervous. During our recovery, we talked more than we had in years. About Dad, about growing up, about the people we'd become. Marcus sold the yacht deposit to cover his medical leave. He found a new job at a smaller firm, doing more pro bono work. Less prestigious, but somehow he seemed happier. Dad's video stayed with me, not just the words but the love behind them. He'd seen this possibility years ago, seen how life could test us, how money and ambition could twist even the strongest family bonds. And he found a way to help us even after he was gone. Last week, I went back to teaching. My kindergartners threw a welcome back Miss Sophie party, complete with crayon drawings of kidneys, mostly purple, some with smiley faces. Marcus came by with cupcakes, sitting cross-legged on the tiny chairs, letting the kids ask questions about his special bandage from the surgery. Later, watching him help clean up frosting smears, I thought about choices and consequences, about the different ways we show love. Maybe Dad's real gift wasn't the trust fund or the medical care. Maybe it was this second chance, for Marcus to remember who he was, for me to learn to forgive, for our family to heal in more ways than one. Yesterday, Marcus asked if I wanted to go look at boats with him. Nothing fancy, just a small sailboat for weekend trips. Life's too short to wait for someday, he said. And I'd rather share adventures with my sister than impress strangers at the yacht club. I smiled and agreed, remembering Dad's words about protecting both his children, one from suffering and one from the person he was becoming. Sometimes the biggest gift we can give someone is the chance to be better than their worst choices. The dialysis machine is gone now, replaced by a healthy kidney and a stronger relationship with my brother. On my bedside table, I keep a framed photo of Dad, taken in his office the day he made that video. He's smiling like he knows something we don't. Which, it turns out, he did. Next to it sits a new photo, Marcus and me on my first day back at school, both looking a little tired but genuinely happy. Different than we were before, but maybe better. After all, that's what family is supposed to be about, not just sharing DNA, but sharing life, with all its complications and second chances. Dad understood that, and now, finally, so do we.